So yeah, Jordy will be empowering your Flutter work flow with code generation, and that will be the talk for now. Check.
Yes, so I'm going to give you a talk about code generation and how you can just work faster and not do a lot of repetitive tasks. But first, I'm going to give an introduction to icapps, because I'll be representing icapps today, and icapps is hosting today's meetup. We started in 2009. We made the first, or I think one of the first, or the first iOS app in Belgium, the Solo Kitchen app. I don't know if anybody has ever used it, but was very handy in the time, I think. But now we have a lot of apps under our belt. I think this number is an older number, so it's more than that now. Also a lot of returning customers, so that's what we really want to do. We want to do a long-term, be a partner throughout their entire process. We have around 100 digital experts. Those are not only mobile developers, but also backend developers. Design, we do a lot of different stuff. And we really want to enrich everyday life. So we choose which projects we take on, only those that are useful for everyday life. We're not going to make gamble apps or anything. I think normally we don't do that. So it has to align with our goals, which is very important to us. We do a lot of different platforms. So basically every platform that you need, we make apps for. We also do the process in the beginning. So if we start with a customer, we do the think phase. So we together with them think, what do you want? Then we do the UI UX stage. We make designs, then we make the application, and then afterwards we provide care if it's done throughout the years. We're also hiring Flutter developers, also freelance Flutter developers. So if you are interested, you can always scan the QR code, or after the meetup, you can, I think on LinkedIn, we have there have jobs open, or you can just talk to someone at icapps here, Hanna's standing there, or anyone else. Yeah. So yeah, that was the introduction over. Now I'm going to talk about code generation. First of all, very important, it's not necessarily AI. I'm not going to talk about AI today, which is hopefully a relief to most people here. Because you can, of course, generate code with AI. You can use IDEs like Windsurf and Cursor to generate code, but that's not what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about code generation for like small sections, that just to speed yourself up, not to say, hey, build my app and then the app is done and then you have to fix everything. It's more to speed up your process than replace you. So there's multiple ways to do code generation. So technically code generation is just like in the name, you generate a piece of code. So just writing a string to a file. If you write a class to a file, then you did code generation, which is the most simple form, which is very useful if you want to do simple automations. The first two packages that I'm going to talk about later are just the simplistic form. And then if you want to get fancy, you can do complex code generation, which is going to plug into Build Runner, which I think most of you here use Build Runner. You can add an extra builder on top of it, and that's going to run with all the rest of the builders you already have. You can also say if you want to run before builders or after builders. So it's a very powerful way to do code generation and to just automate it every time. Very important when to use it. So like I already said, it's more for very specific use cases. You're not going to make entire apps with it, but for boilerplate, it's very handy. Large amounts of code. If you're just doing the same thing like 3 times in total, then it's not really useful to automate it, because then, yeah, the automation is going to take more time than just writing it 3 times. But for example, on Navigator, you're going to add routes like every day, so it's very handy to automate that process, that you don't have to do that every time. Easily configurable. What I mean with that is there's not a lot of parameters, like you know exactly the output you want to get. It's always going to be the same. There's no thinking that has to happen. You just switch out some variables, and then you get the result that you want. And yeah, repetitive code, a little bit the same as boilerplate, but like if you're doing it every day, if you're adding a line to a class every day, then maybe you should automate that process instead of doing that every time. Then how to implement it? You can, like I said, just do code generation by write a string to a file, but there's some tools that will help you. The one that I use a lot is Code Builder. Both of the packages are by tools.dart. But Code Builder basically just gives you easy methods and classes to generate to generate Dart code. So instead of just saying write this class and then doing an entire string that says how the class has to look, to use SourceGen. This is the package that allows you to add extra builders to existing builders, and that's going to do all the stuff behind the scenes, so you can plug into Build Runner. Then I'm going to show you 3 packages that I made, because 3 packages that I saw some problems or some things that could be faster, and that helped me with accomplishing that. So I hope this is just an inspiration for you to see in your own workflow what can I automate, what can be better, and what types of things you can automate with code generation. So the first one is the icon generator. The problem was that when implementing our designs, every time you implement a screen, you have to look for, okay, do I have an icon here? Then you have to export that icon. You have to add it to your local, we call it the theme assets file. It's just basically where you store all the paths to your icons. Problem with that is you can make mistakes in the path name, and then your icon doesn't show up, and then you have to change it again, and you changed your asset name, so maybe you have to completely rebuild your app, and it's just annoying. If you're working with multiple people on one app, a lot of the time some people just export the same icon twice in a different color and with a different name, and then you have 2 X's, and one is called close and one is X, and then yeah, it just gets messy real quickly because it's you don't really have an overview of what is in your app and what do we still have to add. So the solution for that is, first of all, we made an icon library, or our designers made an icon library, which basically houses most of the icons you need to make a mobile app. They're still working on it. Then we turn that icon library into a font. This step is not needed, but it's how most icon libraries work. So it's just easy that you can easily plug into other packages that provide icons. It's just to say the way that Flutter does it, using the icon widget and then doing icons dot. That's also a font. And then last, the most important part is generating your code. So we don't want to every time add every icon separately. We want to generate this to make our lives just easier. I had to plug this from the designers, but our icon library is called Iconic. There's 442 icons. You can use it also. The package is called icapps icons, and if you want to use it, you can just use it, add it to your Flutter project, and use it the same way as you use material icons. So the before is this one. So first we had every icon is a separate path, and we just manually added it every time. After is how it's generated right now. It looks a little different because, again, it's now a font. But this makes it very easy to just automatically generate everything. We also have documentation on top of it. I don't know if you can see that, but the documentation adds the preview. That's very handy that you can hover over your icon and you see the preview of the icon. And then below you can see how you use it in your code. So it's just exactly the same as you use it in Flutter. Or the material icons, but then it's called icapps icons instead of icons. It's a very small package, so I can quickly go through it, how I implemented this. So most of it is in the shell script, actually. The majority of this is turning it into a font. It's apparently not that easy to turn everything into a font. You have to do some special stuff. so it doesn't look broken, and also generating the previews. But afterwards, when we have everything, we have our font, we generate a .ttf file. This is basically just your font, but turning it into XML so you can read out some information like the name of the font, the name of the character, and the position of that character in the font, because a font's just one big file, so you have to know the location of every icon you want to show. And once we have all of that, we go to our parser. This is not that much code. We basically just say, we search where the location of that icon is, and then we generate our code. And this, what you see here, this class file, is what I showed before with Code Builder. This is just a package used to make the string. So you can just manually type this, but this is, I think, in my opinion, way easier and cleaner to read. So we just make one class, icapps icons, and then we add fields to it. And these fields are the different icons that we show. And you can see icons. This is the class that we generate using this small snippet of code. And it's very handy because now in the recent project we use this, and now you can just always use, I need a card icon, and we already have the card icon. If you hover over it, you can see the preview of the icon, which is very handy. And then we don't have the issue anymore of people duplicating icons or having to export it every time, and just speeds up the process a lot. So that was the icons. Like I said before, you can use the icon package on icapps icons. This is just the icons, nothing of the generation of the icons. I think I'm going to make a different package for that, and then not do the whole turning it into a font thing, but that you can choose if you want to turn it into a font, or just drop all your SVGs into an icon folder and then generate the rest. But yeah, that was the icons package. Then another thing we really want to automate was remote config. The problem that we had was every time you add a new flag to the remote config, it takes a lot of time. Because you have to go to we use Firebase, you have to go to Firebase, add it there, you have to go to your codes, you have to add that you receive, you have to add that specific line there as well. See that the keys match. If you have mismatching keys, then it's not going to work. And most of the times you add a default value to your remote config, so you might not even see that it doesn't work until it's already pushed to production, and then you change something in remote config and it doesn't do anything, and then you have to make a new release. So to avoid all that, it's easier to just generate it so you know it's always correct. Also, not every developer always adds everything to the remote config. They just add it in the code, and I'm talking about you, William. They just add it in the code and not in Firebase, and then you don't, it's just a mess because you don't know what's in the code, what's in the Firebase. So to fix all that, I made a generator, which should simplify that process. Using two things, the remote config API. So Firebase just provides an easy remote config API that you can access, and you can just get all the values through an API instead of using the tool online. You have to authenticate with the Google API's auth library first, but it's not that hard. You just need a service.json file or something similar, and you can authenticate. And then similarly to before, we just generate the response that we want. So this is just a small snippet of, again, the code builder package. We just add the fields and the constructor, and then on the right is what you get. So this is all automatically generated based on what I inputted on Firebase in the Firebase console. Also, this I can show real quick. So we first start by reading the config. So what you see in a lot of code builder packages, and it's very handy to have, is a config. It just allows you to change some stuff like here before. For example, I don't have a lot of config, but you need to say path to your credentials, to your Google service credentials for Firebase, and your project ID, so we know which project to look for. You can just read that using the YAML library of YAML package, and you can easily read your config. Then we authenticate with the remote config, and we get the values from remote config. And then again, we just do the same thing. We build everything using the code builder package. I think the most important one is the remote config data. It looks like a long file, but again, this is all very simple stuff. I'm just using the code builder syntax to make my class is then fed by the values I got back from the remote config API. And the result is that I have, I think, remote config data. I just get all of this, and I know these keys will always 100% be correct because I fetch them live from the API. So this is now a very small remote config, but if you have 200 values or something, it's very handy to generate all this. So you can just add everything online, and then you just run the script, and it works. It also automatically gives you the default values that you supplied online. So if you can't access, if your user can't access your remote config because he's offline or something, then it's going to automatically use the correct default values. Because those are also sometimes you forget to update them, and then they don't have internet, and then they use a wrong default value, and yeah, it could cause a lot of problems. But again, it's a very easy thing. The hardest part is getting the data that you want to generate, but the generating part is very easy, and it saves a lot of time. And I think then the last package, and this is not a simple package. This is a widget book generator, which is basically a generator for the widget book generator that already exists. That's why I have an amazing name, widget book widget generator, because widget book generator was taken already. But basically what this fixes is, I don't know how many of you already use widget book, but if you have used it, you know that you have to create use cases every time that you want to add a widget to the widget book. Problem with this is that you have to do this for every widget you want to add. So first you make your widget, and then you have to not forget that you have to make a use case for this widget. Then you have to give it correct default values. If you want it to be editable in the widget book UI, then you have to make knobs out of those items. If it's an enum, then you have to also make a knob out of that. So it's a lot of extra steps. So I think most of the time when people use widget book, they're like, oh yeah, that's going to be very easy. It's going to be so useful for the designers to check our UI. And then after four or five widgets, nobody updates it anymore, and nobody uses it anymore. And then it's a lot of wasted time. And to avoid that, I made a generator, which makes it very easy to just add one annotation on top of a widget, and the rest gets generated automatically. So it looks like this. You have a button, for example, and all you have to add is on the top widget book widget, add widget book widget. I'm still thinking of a better name, but this is what I found so far. But that's all you have to add on top of widget to add it to widget book. So no more making the use case. So on the right is actually what you had to do before. So I'm not doing anything new or something. I'm just generating the stuff widget book needs to generate their use cases. So before you had to do a Boolean knob, and then a list knob with then all the options of your enum, and you had to add all this yourself, and now it just gets automatically generated. It also supports named constructors, so the test button and the test button.text is going to be separate lines in the widget book UI. And as you can see, I use annotations here. So this is the complex way of using code generation, which uses the source gen package that I said before. So I'm going to go through this very quickly because I don't have enough time, I think, to go into too much detail because there's a lot going on. But if you want more info about this, you can, the way I did it, just look at the injectable package. It does something similar. I think William's Flutter Navigator package is also something similar. So you can just steal those ideas. And these ones are also, the widget book widget generator is also on pubdev. So if you want to steal from that, that's also fine. But simply to go through it quickly is you can add builders in your build.yaml file. I think this syntax should be sort of, you should have seen this before if you have experience with build runner before, because you can, in the build.yaml file, you can say which runners go first and which runners can only look at specific files and stuff to speed up your build runner process. But here we can just define our different builders. I have two builders. One goes through every widget that you annotate. So I have the widget book widgets annotation. And I basically just want to collect all of the widgets that have that annotation. And I'm going to make one big JSON file out of them. The reason that I make a JSON file out of that is the default way that build runner works is it's going to generate a generated file for every widget with an annotation. So for example, the test button widget that I showed before, if I do add widget book widget on top of it, what it wants to do is generate a testbutton.g file, but that's not what we want. We don't want a file for every widget that we annotate. We just want to collect all of the info and then dump that into one big use cases file. And to do that, we use the we turn it into JSON. So it just looks like this. It's called a generator. And we just go through all the widgets, we collect them, and then we encode them and turn them into one big JSON file, which then in the next generator, so this is a generator for an annotation, and my annotation is called app. So this annotation is going on top of your, or above your widget book app, because every widget book needs an app as well. And this is going to then use that JSON. So it's called widgetconfig.json, or that's just the name I gave it. And it's going to use all that info to then, again, generate what I want. And then we're just back to the code builder package. That's going to take all that info and use it to make all the methods, because use cases are just methods. So I just have one big, I think I can show the file. It's just one big file of hundreds of lines that has a use case for every single widget. You don't normally have to look at this anymore. This will then get automatically generated. And this is actually all the code that it needs to generate that. The reason this is so complex is because you still have to do the extra work to resolve the imports, because if you use a custom class, then you have to add those imports, and all that extra stuff makes it a little complex. But just generating this stuff is really not that much time if you just use SourceGen together with Code Builder. And I think that was largely what I wanted to show. If there's any questions, you can ask them now, or if there's any later questions, you can ask them to me directly on LinkedIn, just as Jordy De Jonghe. Yeah, I think that was my time. Thank you for listening.